All right, welcome to the, I had to think there, week 12 update. We're getting real late in the season here with just 2 regular season games to play. Real quick, we'll just run down. Obviously, we talked last week that Pat and Kathy have their playoff spots wrapped up. Over in the Hallis, right now you got Fargan Ice Holes and Rasa Dogs with the first 2 spots. And just wanted to remind everybody, I've mentioned it a couple times, we started this last year. There's only 5 playoff teams. It's the first and second place team in each division, and then the 5th spot is a wild card that is the most points regardless of record. So just to kind of, I want to just reiterate that. But so in the Hallis, you got Tony in first, Rasa Dogs in second. Neither one have officially clinched yet. Tony does have that 2-game lead on the 3rd place, but I haven't really worked out tiebreakers. So White Bronco, and then if the season ended right now, it would be Ingrown Hairs in that 5th spot by virtue of the highest points out, having more points than White Bronco. But again, like I was talking with John Sunday. Just seemed to be a little confusion. He cannot, it doesn't matter where he's going to finish in the division now. The only way he's going to get in is by catching me in points or whoever is in 5th in points, which he made a pretty good move there this week. But just trying to clear up the confusion there. Sorry if that was a little rambling, but so there you go. So, like I said, Pat and Kathy from the Lombardi right now, and they are clinched. And right now you have Tony and RB from the Hallis with Pierce's and me battling it out there, trying to get into 2nd place and also that 5th and final playoff spot. Okay, so what I thought I'd do this week, with 3 weeks to go, I kind of planned out my roundups here for the rest of the way. Today we're going to do not necessarily the bust of the draft pick, but just the player that, in some cases it will be the bust, but just a player that didn't kind of probably pan out the way you thought they would from where you drafted them and stuff like that. And then next week I'll do everybody's kind of steal or the most valuable pick. And then the final week 14 update, we'll do kind of a MVP for each team, and then maybe run down the all-star teams for the league, the highest scoring players at each position. But so we'll start, again, going in order of the points race, and Pat kind of pulling away there, got about a 40-point lead with 2 weeks to play, in at 1,762. And as you would expect, as the points leader, not too much to choose from as far as bad draft picks. You could say Olave really didn't live up to that 2nd round billing, but he's come on of late. So I actually went all the way down to Dalvin Cook in round 8. So obviously, if round 8 is your first bad pick, then you had a good season. But Cook just didn't. I don't even know if when we drafted, if he even was signed by the Jets yet or not. But either way, he just didn't live up to the billing. You thought whoever he went with, and then when he went to the Jets, you thought, well, and Breece Hall was injured. You thought, well, maybe they'll get at least a half a season out of it, but it just hasn't worked out at all for Dalvin Cook. Luckily, Pat had other options there at running back. Wasn't really leaning on him, but definitely not one that worked out. And then In second place in the points race, Kathy at 1,724 points. Um, a really good first three picks there. Waddle kind of didn't live up to a number one wide receiver as of yet, but I think the big Dameon Pierce in the fourth round just really did not live up to last year's performance at all. I think most people had high hopes for him. I mean, the Texans didn't really bring anybody in outside of Singletary to challenge him, and it ends up Singletary takes his job from him almost. So, I mean, I know injury has a little bit to do with that, but definitely Pierce not living up to that rookie year breakout there. RB's in third place at 1,601 points. And RB was another one I had to kind of go down pretty far to find a bad pick. I mean, Breece Hall as his number one back didn't quite work out, but in the third round, you know, he's a top 20 back. And I tried to avoid picking guys that were injured, but I really, for RB, you would have to go into the double-digit rounds, like with Treylon Burks. So I'm going to go with James Conner. You know, obviously, had a decent start to the season, got injured. I think it was against the Bengals he got injured, missed a few weeks, went on IR, and he hasn't really torn it up since he's gone back. So, you know, James Conner is your second running back. And it hasn't quite worked out. But luckily, there you see Pacheco right there in the next round has kind of taken the sting away from that. Then we've got Ingrown Hairs in at 1,586 points. Again, Chubb, the obvious answer, but, you know, like I said, I tried not to do injuries because you can't really control that. So, obviously, I guess it has to be Cooper Kupp in the fifth round. You know, I knew it came with risk when you drafted him. I was hoping he would only miss a week or two. Then he ended up getting put on IR, came back from IR and had 2 really good weeks. And then he just kind of got injured again, and it just hasn't worked out at all. Really got my fingers crossed for a resurgence down the stretch, but it's been kind of a rough ride for Kupp this year. And you know, fifth round, probably worth the gamble, but it just didn't work out at all. So that's that. And then in fifth place, we've got the Fargo Nice Holes, Tony in at 1,554 points. So, you know, first 3-4 picks, Walker, so-so year. But, you know, Diggs and Lamb, good. Andrews, good. But then right there in the round 5, you got Cam Akers, and round 6. Just a disaster of a year for him. Basically cut by the Rams, you know, traded for almost nothing to Minnesota. Took him a few weeks to get into the offense, and then he just gradually worked up to about a 50-50 split with Madison, and then gets injured. So, obviously just didn't pan out. I think his whole career has been it's been injury prone, but, you know, I think there's high hopes for him coming in out of the draft to the Rams, and he got the Achilles, and then it's just been sort of just a career that just never got going really for Cam Akers. And this might be kind of his last hurrah with that other big, I think he did it as Achilles again, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. But so we'll head over to White Bronco in sixth place, just 10 points behind, with 1,544 points. And don't have to go as far for them. You know, Najee, despite, you know, a good week or two here and there, especially against our Bengals last week, but in the third round, and he's not even a top 30 back for fantasy. So that kind of jumps out there. And, you know, he's just sort of been, you know, he's another one. He had a good rookie year, and it just sort of kind of had an awful year all year last year and then had a resurgence at the end. But this year, maybe he'll do it again this year. Who knows? But it seems like Jaylen Warren's getting more and more playing time there, and maybe Najee's kind of kind of on the downside, I guess. But definitely didn't live up to that third round pick there. And then, like I said, John making the move up to seventh place, in at 1,497 points. So, less than 100 out of that fifth spot. So, definitely within striking distance there. And another one where, Dobbins obviously hurt. You can't go with that. I went with Metcalf in round 3. He hasn't been awful. He's had some serviceable weeks, but definitely not a third round. I mean, he's not a top 30 wide receiver, almost not even a top 40 wide receiver, and just hasn't really. And I don't think anybody really knew what was going to happen with Seattle with drafting JSN and all that. I think there were high hopes with how good Geno was last year, but it just has none of the three of them. It's like they've all three of them have taken away from each other. None of them have really put up consistently good numbers. Like I said, a flash here or there, but definitely Metcalf, a disappointment in the third round, to say the least. And then that brings us to Who Day 23 with 1,464 points. And pretty easy one here. Obviously, T. Higgins. Granted, injuries, but fuck this guy. I think he laid down on the Bengals in his contract year. He had one good game, had some key drops when he did play. And I mean, come on, you're nursing a hamstring for 3 weeks. Get over yourself, buddy. I'm almost to the point where I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off on him, but I was thinking about that this week, and then it's like he's questionable for this week even. So, really disappointed the way I think that his career ends with the Bengals here. And hopefully, good luck to you the rest of your career, but really kind of quit on the team in my opinion this year. Kind of disappointing, and obviously did not live up to that third round billing. Then we're at Blue Blobs. And you could say Devontae Adams in the second round, but it wasn't like it was a reach or anything like that. He hasn't lived up to a second round receiver, obviously having probably his worst fantasy year ever, but still serviceable, I guess. So I actually went with what I thought was more of a detriment to the team was Justin Fields. I mean, if it would have panned out, Kyle's season could be totally different right now. But, if he would have played like he did, thought he might, that stretch he had last year and everything, but got off to a horrible start. Kyle ended up having to give up on him. Had a flash of 2 weeks, and then I don't know if anybody watched that game last night, but that wasn't NFL football by either team, and it was just awful. So, Fields, definitely the bust of Kyle's draft. Just like I said, if he does half of what he did in his stretch last year, it's a totally different season for Kyle, and it just didn't work out for him. And then, lastly, your mama in at 1,429, and obviously the Justin Jefferson injury. But like I said, I'm kind of kicking out, and Garrett Wilson's got him because of Rodgers' injury. So I go down. Christian Watson in the fourth round just has not, outside of this past week, is obviously his best week of the year, but just hasn't lived up to the hopes that I think. Obviously Kevin had for him, and I think a lot of people. I thought he was a steal in the fourth round, and ends up just not really putting it together, not being any kind of consistent performer at all for the season. All right, so that's kind of what I got there. Just everybody's kind of, just not where they went wrong necessarily. All of them were values. Really what I noticed going through it is everybody kind of picked good. It was kind of hard to find, you had to go pretty low. Nobody really busted outside of injuries. Nobody really busted in the first or second round, really. So, And the other thing I noticed, and then as we move away from that into our game of the week, as bad as the scoring was, I think so many unders hit this week in the NFL. But as bad as it was, there were some huge points scored in the fantasy league. Like Kyle was low man at 120, that's hardly an ever low man for 120. Usually 120 will maybe squeak you out a win every week. So lots of high scoring this week. And actually some tough games to choose from here. You had Rossadog squeaking one out of there, Rahude. Kathy ended up pulling away from Kevin at the end, but that one was tight the whole way. But what I settled on, John's kind of been, he's been in this segment a lot, and usually on the losing end of it. But a close loss to White Bronco, a huge win for White Bronco. Really need it coming down the stretch here. I obviously am following them because I'm battling them for the spot. And about midway through Sunday, I look and John's got a pretty big lead on him. Lawrence has had a big day. John had they both had decent Thanksgiving, with Amon-Ra for John, and then the Pierces with Tony Pollard. But John, he got the big game from Calvin Ridley, big game from Tank Dell, Jonathan Taylor before he got kind of dinged up there. So, but all early. And, so John's sitting at 143, like at the end of the early games. Pierce has got a lot of catching up to do. And they sure did it. I mean, got the huge game from Keenan Allen, 24 points on the Sunday night. And that got him within. And then, A.J. Brown, kind of a slow start to the game, but he ended up with a decent game. And got him within striking distance on Monday night. And Cole Kmet does just enough there with the 11 points to pull out the 6-point win. So, like I said, a big win for White Bronco. Keeping pace there. Just staying a game out of second in the division. And putting up 150 points this time of year. That's what you need when you're driving for that final playoff spot. So a good week. Hope everybody had a nice Thanksgiving, and good luck the rest of the way.